Welcome to The Business Strategist, the show for CEOs and founders ready to scale fast, lead smarter, and build a business that doesn't rely on them. I'm Adam Strong, award-winning strategist, former elite athlete, international speaker, and 3 times best-selling author. After 3 decades in business, I know exactly what it takes to grow, scale, and exit with impact. Each week, I dive into real conversations with industry experts, bold entrepreneurs, and clients navigating the uphill struggles of business, giving you the tools and the strategies to create more profit, more freedom, and more impact. Let's get into it. Hey guys, I just wanted to take this opportunity to make you aware of a brand new tool that we've just created called the Exit Readiness Assessment. Now, it is for founders and CEOs that are looking to exit from their business operations. Now, it doesn't matter even if you're not looking to exit right now, I would highly recommend to go and take the assessment straight away. It helps you to identify areas in your business that you need to work on to help you towards that exit strategy. And at the end of it, you get a personalized report on some of the areas that you're doing particularly well in and some of the areas that you need to make some improvements to. Make sure you head over to readytoexit.scoreapp.com. That's readytoexit.scoreapp.com. Enjoy. Most founders are walking around with a massive hole in their balance sheet and they don't even know it's there. Now, you might have spent years optimizing a sales funnel, you've automated your lead generation, and you're probably obsessed with increasing your company valuation. But what if you walk into the office tomorrow and everyone tells you that they're, hey, just fine? Now, from my perspective, if everyone just tells you that they're fine, then you're in serious trouble. And in my world, fine is the sound of a team that's already checked out. They're draining your payroll every month, and they really stop delivering the value that you really pay them for. We're living in what we call a relationship recession. We have more connectivity than we ever have done, but less actual human connection. And that's the gap. That's what I call the silent tax that's stripping value of your company valuation every day. Now, today's guest is the amazing Morag Bharat. Now, she is a member of the elite Marshall Goldsmith 100 coaches and award-winning author and a world-class keynote speaker. I actually had the privilege to meet up with Morag a few months ago in London. She actually was featured here on the podcast, and I can't remember how many years ago, but I just re-looked back at this, Morag, and it was episode 167. Now, for you guys that are listening on to this, depending on when you're listening to this will probably be around almost 400. So it just kind of gives you some context as to how much time we have spent here. But honestly, I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Morag's turned into a really good friend of mine, and she's introduced me to some wonderful people in her circle. So without further ado, Morag, welcome to the show.
Adam, this is going to be such a fun conversation.
Absolutely. So listen, it was great to meet you in London as well. And we had so much fun. And I know that you were there on business as well as pleasure and stuff like that. But it's always good to meet people in person. So just want to say I really enjoyed our time.
Yeah, the stars really aligned. So that trip to London allowed me to attend the Thinkers 50 Gala at the London Guildhall and hang out with Dan Pink and Amy Edmondson and Francis Fry, some amazing thought leaders in my world. But it also allowed me to meet a couple of the executives that I'm coaching that I'd never met in 3 dimensions. I'd only met them through the power of technology, which you talked about in your introduction. And of course, the pleasure and a little bit of business piece was to be able to hang out and connect with people like yourself, where we've had conversations through the interwebs, but being able to do it over a cup of coffee and an almond croissant, my Achilles heel, was delightful.
Absolutely. 100%. Love that. What I would endorse you to do is to make sure you've got a notebook and pen handy, because I know that what Morag is going to deliver to you guys is an absolute masterclass when it comes to building relationships in our businesses. And I feel like this is it's not only it's an interesting topic, but also it is a topic that I feel that probably there isn't that many experts out there that really have the insights that Morag is about to share with us. So let's start. Let's start because I know that we talked a little bit about in the introduction, which is a relationship recession. What is a relationship recession from your perspective? What's the impact that it has on business, especially where there's so much AI now compared to when we did our podcast a few years ago? I don't know if people even heard of AI. What's your thoughts about that?
Oh my goodness, there's about 10 different threads I could pull on there. But that relationship recession, let me just start there.
Yes.
I was thinking about, as I was listening to the introduction that you gave, that my own morning, and I'm based in Colorado, so a few hours behind you in the UK,
Yep.
I have responded to leaders and messages that I've received on WhatsApp, maybe 3 different channels, certainly on Slack from my own team,
Right.
emails, text, phone call, and Zoom. That's 6 different avenues. Oh, and LinkedIn. Oh, yeah. I forgot about the LinkedIn messages that I've also received. So
The
there you
most
go.
important.
7 different technology platforms that people are using to connect with me. And as you pointed out, even with AI and with all of these technology advances, all this does is give us the illusion of connection. Because what many leaders that I'm coaching are doing is it's read, action, delete, hustle, hustle, hustle. They're responding to reply, but that is not the same as creating and investing in our professional relationships. And then they wonder at the end of the day, why do I feel so drained? Why do 67% of the leaders I work with and through my research say, my success has been undermined by the words or actions of a colleague. They've been surprised, and not in a good way, by something that a colleague has done. And why is it even more heartbreaking to me that 20% of the leaders who've completed their ally mindset profile, our core research paper, tell me that they feel isolated, lonely, or disconnected at work? So that's what I mean by a relationship recession. We can all do fake perky on a Zoom call for 30 minutes, or when somebody says, how are you doing? Fine. But what happens when you hang up? If you're not still as perky, if you're sitting there going, oh, I can't even, that is a red hot warning flag, if I mix my metaphors, that you are in a relationship recession and that you should call me or call Adam.
You made a really valid point there. You've got all these, what I call tools, channels. I don't quite fundamentally understand where effectively we've got less friction between how we communicate, whether it be between me and you or the team or whatever it is, yet there's more burnout, there's less productivity, and yet people feel more isolated. Can't quite understand why people feel that way. Give us some context. What's the data say about that?
Well, I can tell you what our data says and what leaders tell me every single day. Firstly, think about the last Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, Hangout call you were on.
Yeah.
My
Today,
guess
actually.
is today we end up in back-to-back Google Zoom, whatever your poison is, meetings, and we still don't have room for a bathroom break, yet most of us work from home. So that certainly is an example of we overschedule ourselves. But what I've noticed since the pandemic is we jump on these calls. Maybe I'm 10 seconds late. And the first words out of my mouth are, I'm sorry I'm late. And then we get down to business.
Yeah.
Now, when we were co-located, we
Yes.
would walk between buildings or floors or meeting rooms. There was a passing time. So yes, the
Yes.
meeting was scheduled to start at the top of the hour, but we would roll in 5 minutes later because I did take the bathroom break, or maybe I bumped into somebody in the corridor who says, do you have a minute? Or I stopped to get a cup of coffee. And nobody blinked an eye. And in that time, we had conversations. How was your weekend? How were your holidays? We got to know the human behind the job title.
Yes.
And so one tactic, and it is so easy but so powerful if we do it, is to start each meeting with a few minutes of, so how are you doing? Not just straight into, what are you doing?
I want to pick up a point that you made just briefly, which is the word transactional.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really interesting word because, especially, again, I see this a lot with a lot of the clients I work with, and it's probably the same for you. Doesn't matter if they're running a 7, 8, 9 figure business or whatever it is. People are so transactional minded these days about hitting their targets, their KPIs. They feel there's pressure or whatever it is. How does that then have an impact to the relationships that we're trying to cultivate within the business? What does that do to that?
So my first career, I'm
Mm.
on my fifth or sixth, depending on how you want to count it, was in finance. I worked for one of the biggest banks in the UK, lending millions of pounds to companies. And this is why I now do what I do, because everybody was focused on the numbers, on the transaction, on the profit margins, on the cash flow forecast. Got to get the business done. What do we do and how do we organize ourselves to do it?
Yeah.
But the missing part of the equation is who we are as individuals and as humans, and how do we relate?
Yeah.
So that's the how do we collaborate? Where do decisions get made? Where is the friction in between individuals, between teams, between divisions that are slowing down our ability to deliver the business results?
Mm.
And that's why I switched. Because unless we invest in our relationships, yeah, you'll do okay, but what are you leaving on the table by virtue of slowing down enough to bring people with you versus chasing you?
Yeah.
And so going back to your question there about the transaction, when we only focus on getting straight down to business, yes, you are going to do okay. Because
Mm.
while it is easy for me, I'm going to write the article, complete the spreadsheet, call the client, do the thing.
Mm.
But here is what's at risk. It's when the proverbial hits the fan, and it is going to for everybody, whether it's individually or for your company or for your industry. Something is going to shift and pull the rug out from under you. That is the moment that if you have not invested in your relationships to move them from transactional to transformational, that's when you can find yourself alone and most vulnerable at your biggest time of need. So when the light's on, when we're all achieving our results, when it's easy, you're not going to perhaps even recognize that your relationships are transaction. They're shallow. They are, you do what you do and I'll do mine and we'll be fine. It is when we get thrown into the crucible of uncertainty, different opinions, change, that's when we get exposed.
I think that, and I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I feel like because the world is so fast moving, is that we become so not deluded. We become so kind of like focused in our own little bubble, if you want to call it that. And I don't know, it's not that it doesn't become a priority. If you're running a 7 or 8 figure business, whatever it may be, the question that would come to my mind is, why should I care? And it sounds really, really rude, but it's like, okay, so am I, and you mentioned this in your previous book, which we talked about in the previous podcast. And the first thing that came to my mind was, what's the business case for the relationships of the work? Why should I even contemplating on prioritizing? Because you're saying it's really a priority.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying, okay, well, but what about all the other stuff? Like, why should I put that to the top of the list and not use it as a kind of like, as a last minute kind of first aid kit as, oh shit, we need to now implement this quick because if we don't, the whole business is then going to crumble. So that's kind of my thoughts.
Well, so first of all, because success in business is powered by relationships and
Mm,
success in life is fueled by connection. That's
true.
what my research shows time and time again. And if you are a CEO, a senior leader, a founder of an organization, as much as your ego is telling you that if you just work a little faster, you can do it all yourself, I'm going to call BS on it. Because even as a solopreneur,
Yeah.
your success is dependent on others, whether it's the relationship with your clients, the relationship with your family who are rolling their eyes at yet another midnight, burn the hour, work all weekend, just got to do one more thing message. But certainly if you are in an organization that has now grown and you have employees, whether it's tens of employees or tens of thousands of employees, that especially if you are now in the hundreds and thousands of employees, I am telling you right now, you cannot work hard enough to run your business. You are dependent on those hundreds and thousands of people to align and deliver those results. And therefore, if you are not prioritizing investing in your relationships, you are leaving money on the table, you are increasing your anxiety, risk of heart attack, and loneliness, and you are undermining the success not just of yourself, but those who work with and for you. Do I sound assertive enough there? I mean, I'm just so passionate about this, and it doesn't require more meetings. It doesn't require you to reveal this was my childhood and my inner psyche. No, it just requires you to do the thing that you just mentioned, which is to care,
Yes.
to show that you care. And you can do the yes and, the improv thing of, okay, Adam, I'm sorry, your cat just died. You can show empathy, you can care, and how can I both support you, but also how do we ensure that the business goals get achieved? Because I can promise that the time that your team member has a crisis, it will be your turn next week when you're returning and saying, hey, can you cover for me? I need to go and do X.
Yeah.
So investing in your relationships makes or breaks founders, leaders at all levels and at all stages of their career.
Love that. Talk to me a little bit about the relationship ecosystem. When I thought about this, and I was thinking to myself, what is a relationship ecosystem in itself? What is it, and why should I care?
Well, that is in my first book, Cultivate the Power of Winning Relationships. And it goes back to the very scientific term that you used a moment ago, which is we're all living in our own bubble.
Yep.
When we say we're fine, we're painting ourselves as the hero or victim of our own little life movie, and we're at the center of the universe. But the reality, as I've already shared, is our success is dependent on others. And it was exhausting in finance when things started to go sideways for my clients. The finger pointing and blame was first out of leaders' mouths. So in Cultivate the Power of Winning Relationships, I wanted to change the conversation from finger pointing and blame to one of who am I dependent on for my success? Who are those critical few relationships that I need to be investing in today? Because let's be clear, if you are a founder with 100 employees, you don't have time for lunch with everybody one-on-one. But within those hundreds, at different levels of your organization, there may be a top 10.
Yeah.
And then if you layer on your board of advisors, if you layer on your key clients and customers, now you might have a list of 30 names. And the relationship ecosystem was a model that I created to identify and diagnose the health of those critical relationships. And there are 4 relationship dynamics that we experience every single day. And we're either implicit or explicit in understanding that. There is the ally, best friend at work, the go-to colleague that you know if you called them right now and said, hey, I'm in a bit of a pickle, they would help you out. They're also the ones that are going to celebrate your successes and give you the kick in the pants when you need it. The tough love. The Adam, that was not a good idea, but I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'm going to say that was not a good idea. And now what are you or what are we going to do to help you to come back from that misstep? You have supporters. Yep. Now, those are conditional relationships. They're still focused on your success, but they're more like your fan club. It's, yay, go Adam. And whereas your allies are going to give you the feedback you need to hear, your supporters are going to give you the feedback you want to hear. Your presentation wasn't as bad as you thought. You'll be fine. Yeah. And so again, it means average becomes the norm. Innovation for you personally or for the team starts to get stifled. It's a culture of nice versus kind. Many of my healthcare clients bring me in when they're saying, well, we've all been nice, we're family centric, but we need to amp up the goal setting, accountability, and feedback. Then as we move around the model to what I call the dark side, you get rivals. Rivals are conditional relationships, but they are me focused. When it suits my agenda, I'm all for you, go at 'em. And when it doesn't, I'm not. So it's Jekyll and Hyde. And think about it, Adam, if you've worked with a colleague which feels a little tense, occasionally you butt heads, occasionally it's great. When you're going into a meeting with a rival, what are you thinking and focusing on?
Me personally?
Yeah, think about the last time you worked with somebody where there was a little bit of friction, and sometimes it was tough and sometimes it was easy. As you're going into a meeting with a rival, what are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about how I can beat them.
Bingo. We're either going in thinking about, I'm going to say this before Morag starts, or if she does that, I'm going to do this. It's offensive or defensive, depending on your mindset. But we're not focused on the business decision. We're not focused on the why we're coming together. Now, in the short term, a rival elevates our games because we prep and we think and we anticipate, like you just described. But long term, we just end up looking over our backs for the next take. And then the fourth dynamic is the adversary. And the adversary is unconditional. What you see is what you get. It's invariably butting heads. But there are three things with an adversary. Firstly, if you are perceived or misperceived as an adversary, at your best, you are a brilliant jerk. At your worst, you're just a jerk. And people will start to filter information. It's like if they know you're having a bad day, they're not going to give you bad news. They're certainly not going to stick their neck out for you because it's all about you. And let's face it, you're a bit of a jerk. Now, the counterpoint, the third part of an adversary is I have yet to meet anybody who gets up in the morning and says, I hope I get seen as an adversary today. And so this comes full circle that the reason we end up with adversaries, rivals, supporters, is because we've not invested in that relationship. We've not sat down and said, Adam, what's your definition of success? What happens under pressure? Here's what on time means for me, Morag, when we're meeting a client. And to be clear, we're in reception 15 minutes before that meeting, not rolling in 5 minutes before, which I've had happen with a colleague. And if we don't have that conversation of what it means to work together, all my colleague knows is I'm a bit pissy because you've rolled in late, but I've never actually had the conversation around what late means.
Yes.
So the relationship ecosystem provides a language around both how would you diagnose the health of your relationship around those four dynamics, but also how might that critical stakeholder describe you? And then that gap, the intent is, what do I need to do? What conversations do we need to have to help us both to explicitly be allies? For you to know that I have your back, that you can take informed risk, that if something goes wrong, call me. We'll talk about how and why it went wrong, but I'm there to help you to recover from it, not to beat you over the head with it.
Yeah. You're ready to exit, so why haven't you? You may be in business for 15, 20, 25 years of building your business, but the passion is gone. You're done. But one question keeps you stuck. Is the number close enough to walk away without any regret? What can you actually spend? What kind of life does it fund? And will you look back in 5 years wishing you'd stayed in your business? Now, our sponsor, Zentum, works exclusively with founders at this exact moment. They're chartered financial planners who show you exactly what exit really means. Your spending power, your options, even income that you can generate outside the business. They give you the clarity to pull the trigger with confidence or a plan to bridge the gap. Visit zentum.co.uk and find out if it's finally time. That's zentum.co.uk and find out if it's finally time. I think the first thing that springs to my mind, because really what you described are what I call archetypes. They're archetypal personalities, if you want to call it that, really. And I guess who's to judge which archetype you are? It depends on your circumstances, depend on who you are, what your personality is, depend on could be many different factors of what archetype you are. But I guess my thought process is that if you
Yeah.
are a leader going into a business, okay, and you might be someone that's new to the business and you're trying to find your feet with who's who within the business, right? What are maybe a couple of questions that would help that leader categorize each person into an archetype? Is there anything that springs to
Oh,
mind more?
so I do want to clarify. Ally,
Yes.
supporter, rival, adversary, they are
Yes.
not about the person. They are
Uh-huh.
about the dynamics between us.
Got it.
Because as I said, nobody aspires to be an adversary or even a rival. We
No, of
may
course.
aspire to be allies and friends, but it's describing the gap between how we relate and how we work, not just on the good days, but on those bad days.
Yes.
And
That
so
makes
if you
complete
want questions, how can you understand where you might be? Well, firstly, read Cultivate, The Power of Winning Relationships.
That's a
And then
good
if you
one.
want to know how to show up as an ally, that's where You, Me, We, Why We All Need a Friend at Work and How to Show Up as One, which I wrote with my own friends at work, Eric and Ruby, gives you the 5 practices of an ally mindset. But I'm going to give you 3 critical questions. It's what I
Love it.
call a relationship pulse check.
Let's do that.
You're going to hold on to your seats here. This is earth-shattering stuff. So you don't have to ask all 3 questions in the same conversation, but ask them consistently over time. I guarantee you will strengthen and deepen the relationships that you have at work and in life. You ready?
Yep. Yep.
Question 1. What's working?
Yep.
Question 2. What's not working? Or words to that effect. Where's the friction? Where's the rub? Where do I get in the way
Yeah,
of our success?
that makes sense.
Question 3. What's one thing I can do, we can do to be better together? Now, they might ask for something that you don't feel able to give or isn't appropriate, which is fine. Better to know and say, Adam, I'm glad you asked for the moon, but we don't have the budget for the moon, but I can give you this little star. Because if I don't ask, what do you need? Then the story you write is Morag doesn't care, goes back to your earlier question. And if she doesn't care, why should I care? I'm not going the extra mile. I saw the typo on the spreadsheet or the PowerPoint, but I'm not going to, whatever. Each
Yeah.
to their own. So ask. If you can do it, and do it like you mean it and do it consistently. And if you can't, offer a compromise. Or if you can't do that, then at least acknowledge, I can see why that is important to you. Here's why not this year, this project, this budget.
Yeah.
Because now I feel seen, heard, valued, that you care, therefore I care.
Yeah. So it's not rocket science, ladies and gents. We're not giving you a secret formula about how to become a neuroscientist, of course, but this is
But it is
I love
critical. It
Yes.
really does. I've seen it. We have a defense contractor as a client, double PhD, scientists,
Wow.
locked doors, can't even tell you what we're working on because then whatever. And when we first arrived at that organization, I'm not joking, it was like tumbleweeds. I live in America, so I get to see those all the time. They're real.
Yeah.
It was empty corridors, no connection. People just went and did their secret squirrel stuff and moved on. And the CEO came to our first program, and 2 things came out of it. One is he's gone through every single cohort, not just arriving as the guest speaker at the beginning and the end. He has sat through every single program with every leader in his organization because it was that important to him. He role modeled the commitment to leadership and management development, and as a result, built connection and relationships with the leaders as they went through it. But I remember in that first cohort, he turned to us and he said, "Are you saying I've got to start every meeting with small talk?" And we looked at him and we said, "Why, yes, we are." So he put on his agendas, I'll use your name by way of example, Adam's 5 minutes of small talk. So it was Blaming us, it was a little trite and contrived, but everybody understood the joke. Well, it took hold, such that other leaders started adding Adam's 5 minutes of small talk to their agendas.
Yes.
And I'm not joking, here we are now. You go in that organization, there are still the secret pastors, the projects they can't talk about. But when they pass in the corridor, when they meet in the break room, there is laughter, there is connection, there are relationships. It has transformed retention. It has transformed engagement. It has transformed their ability to collaborate and solve problems that then allow them to deliver their business results.
Just by adding small talk.
And our program and some
Yeah,
other
of
things.
course.
But yes,
Okay.
it is by slowing down enough to not just say, "How are you?" and then
Yes.
keep walking and not be interested in the answer, but to listen and ask a follow-up question and connect at a human level.
It's really interesting. To me, it's a bit alien that someone wouldn't use small talk in prior to a meeting or whatever it might be. To me, it's a bit alien because it's like, well, who would do that? Like, who would just go straight into a meeting and just kind of like blow his own kettle or blow her own kettle type of thing? Like, to
I
me,
would.
it doesn't. You would. Okay, it's
Well,
interesting.
I would in my early career. So I
Yes.
focused and I was very proud of being independent. Give me a problem, a task, a project. I will
Yeah.
go and deliver it with minimum of management insight or need or collaboration. And I
Sure.
realized that independence only builds that island, and isolation, it's interdependence. You mentioned personality styles earlier on. My disc profile, if you use that, is right at high noon. I am a D, quick to
D.
decide, and an I, options. So you can come to me and say, I have a problem with, and I've already decided what you should do, but I've got 100 other things, and I haven't even heard what the is that you've got the problem with. I'm that good at it. So I'm quick to move, quick to action.
Mm.
And I have learned to embrace silence. I am learning to embody the power of the pause. And I am learning to spend time in small talk. That's one of the reasons I wrote my book. So the last 15 years, I have been learning two sides to small talk. I have an innate ability to ask questions that get people to tell me all sorts of things about work, what they love, what stresses them, and their home lives. But I rarely revealed anything. My British
Sure.
stiff upper lip, my upbringing, which was don't rock the boat, remain cool, calm, and composed at all times, meant I rarely showed any cracks. I am learning that when I share my own highs and lows, when I share the missteps and, the things that have made me laugh or embarrassed, it builds a level of connection. But it goes back
Yes.
to what I said earlier. You don't have to reveal everything, but
No.
you can reveal a darn sight more than you are right now, and I guarantee it will reap dividends both for you and for your colleagues.
Yeah. Otherwise, you might end up being called
So,
some
yeah.
sort of douchebag or something like that, which we
Well,
don't
yeah,
want.
and so when you say you find it hard to believe why wouldn't anybody do this, I want to acknowledge I've written 2 books on this topic. I speak on this topic regularly, and yet there are times where I just need to go one more minute, is when I can sense that somebody else wants to small talk for 6 minutes, but I was ready to finish at 4.5. Slow down, more like let it happen, but
Yeah.
keep an eye on the time, the goals, because the
Yeah.
reality is we are here for business, but you
Yes.
don't get the business results without the humans.
No, I agree. I agree. Um, Talk to me a little bit about, because I know that with a lot of how business has evolved quite considerably now. I mean, businesses have now taken on a lot more remote working
Mhm.
and especially with a lot of our listeners, they're looking at ways in which they can increase their team, but maybe looking at different jurisdictions where they can get a specialist skill set or maybe cheaper labor or whatever it is. What are some of the biggest connection challenges with running remote teams in particular or hybrid teams? How can leaders overcome that?
They need to schedule spontaneity.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we talked a little bit about that earlier in our conversation around how we'll jump onto the Zoom Teams, Google Meet, Hangout call and jump straight down to business.
Yes.
So it is about slowing down. And even if it's something like grab something on your desk and talk about it, put one word in the chat to describe how you're feeling today. No need to
Yep.
discuss it, but that
No.
describes how you're feeling today or feeling for the year, and then move on. To do the things that we would do naturally over breakfast, lunch, a cup of coffee in the break room, we need to be intentional about creating those opportunities online.
Mm.
And to be honest, before the pandemic, I was firmly of the opinion that if you want to be a better human, you have to do it in a room with other humans. Well, the pandemic, like, ain't happening. And I
Sure.
can tell you now, Adam, I mean, you think about our relationship. Our meeting in London last year was the first in 3 dimensions, yet our relationship spans 3 years. And
Yep.
some of my newest, deepest friends, I have only met through the camera. And
Yes.
part of it was an intention shift and a mindset shift by me, which is
Right.
to say that, when I was a kid and I had a pen pal on very thin airmail letter where you had to write very small and on both sides, and if you sneezed, it would tear. If I could build a relationship with somebody in another part of the planet by snail mail, then
Yep.
I can intentionally choose to show up in a way on camera that also builds a level of intimacy, trust, and connection that helps us to collaborate from different parts of the planet.
Yes.
And it was an eye-opener for me, and it is now part of how I show why you're now seeing a bit more of my backdrop. You can see
Yeah.
Clifford, you can see the flags, you can see the unicorn.
Clifford.
That's a unicorn wig. There's a whole story behind the unicorn wig. But there's stuff there that if you choose to, you can ask about, I can share about, but it brings again a bit more of the morag as opposed to just the buttoned up newscaster version that you might have seen earlier in the pandemic.
Just a quick one, and I want to kind of backtrack, if I may, around what we talked about, which was the allies, supporters, rivals, and
Mm.
adversaries. What you mentioned, yeah. Now, for say a founder or a CEO that feels like they're, I suppose, pushing a boulder uphill, how does one audit, say, their leadership team? How do I spot, say, people within my team that are, say, hitting their KPIs as an example, but actually quietly in the background, they're actually a toxic employee? How do I, might be through a combination of emotional intelligence, or it might be a combination of self-awareness and whatever it is, but is there some sort of like framework that you advise leaders about how can you connect, like, not just identify these people, but how can you get them to shift from one to the nut to another?
Well, you can read Cultivate or You, Me, We. You can call
Yeah.
me in as an executive coach or as a team coach or work with
Yeah.
somebody like Adam. But the first question you said, well, how would I know if
Yes.
one of my leadership team is acting this way?
Yes.
I can guarantee you're seeing it in your engagement data. You're seeing it in the people going, well, Adam was a bit of a jerk today. You can
Yes.
see it in the awkward silences when somebody or you say something with the intent of cutting to the chase, but instead you cut to the quick and you stifle input and ideas, and it like sucks the oxygen out of the room. So if
Yeah.
as a leader, you're getting people coming to you offline to say, so and so is being aggressive, just not helping, take it seriously.
Yeah.
Because if you're not listening and coaching them to change, because this isn't rocket science, they're either choosing whether they're going to demonstrate the corporate values and how they show up,
Yeah.
or they're choosing not to, in which case you should not have them on your team. Because if they're delivering results, but it's clean up on aisle 13 and you are repairing relationships and apologizing behind the scenes, oh, well, that's just Adam being Adam. Your credibility is suffering and your business is suffering because nobody wants to work with a brilliant jerk or a jerk. So
No.
fix it. Stop allowing, well, we've been friends for 10 years. Oh, well, that's just Adam being Adam. BS. It is enough. Fix it. And if they can't and they choose not to change, don't keep them on your team, because I guarantee you bring in somebody who does work
Yeah.
collaboratively. You can still have high standards. You can still tell me you want more or different, but do it in a way that excites and ignites me. You're going to reap the benefit. There was a lot in there. I was getting
There
even
was
more
a lot.
passionate.
Absolutely. No, it was just a really interesting thought that kind of sprung through my mind. So that's why I thought I'd ask the question. Here's a really interesting thought here. And now some of our listeners here are people that are ready to, they've exited their business, as in the founder has exited the business operationally, and they're moving into the next stage, of course. Now, when, say, private equity or someone is coming in to buy a business, they're always for a key man, or they're looking for, discontentment within the team to see what are the risks in buying this business. Because again, if a founder is the glue that keeps all the moving parts together, then you know damn well that the valuation is going to be much further down. How can a how can a founder prove that the relationships in a company are an asset within the business? One of the things that I talk a lot about is the importance of culture, because culture and relationships go hand in hand, of course. One of the biggest fears that come to my mind if I were buying a business is everyone's going to jump ship as soon as I buy a business, right? Or
Yeah.
there's not going to be a smooth transitional period. That's one of my biggest fears and pain points of buying a business. How can I, as a founder, kind of create peace of mind for that person buying the business based on the relationship that I built?
Yeah, because often with a startup organization, you get the cult or the culture of one. And
Yes.
founders, by their nature, are passionate about this new idea and lead the way. And
Yeah.
as an investor, as a hereditary leader taking over that organization, one of the key things is to show that those relationships, those critical relationships that I talked about earlier, are not personalized, they're institutionalized. And what do I mean by
Yes.
that? Yes, you want to have personal relationships with your core clients, with other CEOs and other organizations, with your own leadership team.
Yeah.
But I would be listening for language I versus we. Because if it's I did this, I do that, I make this happen, that's a red flag.
Yeah. Agreed.
We want relationships, not just me and the CEO or me and the vendor. It's got to be relationships at all levels of the organization.
Yeah.
I want to see those cadences and KPIs, not just focusing on did we sell enough widgets, but also understanding, well, what is the retention of both our core clients, external relationships, but also internally, what's attrition and what are we doing with talent? How lot time does it take to fill new vacancies? Do we have a ready pipeline of people who want to join this brand and organization, not just for the widget success, but because they see it as a pathway to their own career success?
Yeah.
So there is trust evidence in those renewal rates, the referral business, etc. There's shared history in the documents. Do the annual investor reports show, again, the hero or heroine single leader, or is it the team? And are they also looking beyond me and my founder team to what are the next generations? What is that longer term path if we started building that capability within the organization?
It's very difficult to quantify relationships in a way that, how does one quantify a team of relationships, or a team, how well people gel together? When you agree on that, it's very difficult to quantify something like that.
Yes, no, and maybe. I mean, I certainly think that is why many people choose not to give it care and attention, because they perceive it as soft skills and
Yes.
too squishy. And there is no direct line of sight, accurate to do decimal places, life or death way of proving that this. But there is. Because
Yeah.
if you're going in and having conversations, or if you're listening to the hallway conversations and there's BMWing, bitching, moaning, and whining around why things are or aren't happening, that is a sign that the culture is dented. If
Yeah.
decisions are getting bogged down in committees versus being made quickly and efficiently, that's a sign that the wrong people in the room, relationships, and the trust isn't there. And even if the decisions are happening quickly, if execution isn't happening, that is invariably the passive resistance of the weak relationships outside of the room. So there are plenty of ways to measure this if we choose to look and if we care enough to ask the questions in the first place. Even those 3 questions I gave you earlier as part of due diligence. What's working? What's not working? What's one thing you would hope that the new ownership will do different? Then that's going to give you a pulse for, are you ready to step up and step into that challenge in order to deliver the business results?
Yeah, love that. Something that we like to do on the show, Morag, and something that I haven't actually shared with you. So
Surprise.
we did this with Jennifer, actually, our good friend Jennifer Fond. You guys that didn't listen to that, we did a great recording about a month ago. So as part of like what we do, Morag, is we do the speaker, Hugh, would go into what we call coaching mode. Me as the student, I suppose there's a lot of things that we've covered in today's amazing conversation, and I'm just thinking about my conversations that I've had with clients, even my own business, and how someone like you could help me in terms of not just seeing relationships as a, like you said, just as a soft skill type of thing, because I'm sure when you hear that, your blood just wants to boil and you want to punch someone in the face.
Not a great relationship building tactic. Please do not punch people in the face. But yeah, just my 2 penneth. That's what makes me top notch.
No, exactly. So not a good one. But
No.
I'm just thinking like how we could turn this into a bit of a coaching session. And I'm just thinking to myself, and it's really interesting. I've got a small team, and it's interesting because a lot of them have been with me for many, many years. And I just think to myself, I was thinking to myself, like, one employee's been with me for over 5 years. It doesn't sound like a huge amount of time. But actually, it's quite a significant amount of time. And I'm just saying to myself, like, why is it that he continues to want to work with me? Obviously, he must be very, very happy. But then you get other business leaders that really struggle to retain some of their top talent in the business, right? Because of whether it be the lack of relationship or connection. It's really interesting. I find that quite fascinating.
Well, so I've got 3 questions.
Yes.
And I might forget them all by the time I get them out there. Because again, remember, DI, I've got options. So firstly, attrition. Losing and not retaining your top talent. That is not necessarily a bad thing.
No, true.
And often leaders will use it in a sentence, much like I heard from you, that that's a bad thing. Let's face it, there's one CEO seat. If the founder is staying for another 5-10 years, then at some point the leadership team may leave to go and be CEO elsewhere. What you want is when your talent leaves is for them to go, oh my God, yes, working as part of Adam's team, phenomenal. This is what I learned, and that's why I was able to make this career jump. What you don't want is for them to go, God, worst 5 years of my life, that guy. So this comes back to the relationship. So attrition. The second one was, I heard you say, so I am remembering most of them. Why has he stayed? Well, this is part of making the implicit explicit. We forget to ask. And it's not just, why have you stayed for 5 years? And thank you. What is it you love about the work? What's not? And what can we do differently? But also thinking future. You've been with me for 5 years. You've seen the work I do. In what way do you want to learn and grow? And for 2026, where should we be adding new responsibilities, different responsibilities, or delegating some of the things that you've done for 5 years to somebody else on the team? So relationships, the third element that I want to share, is they are built or destroyed one conversation at a time.
Yes.
And the longer we work with somebody, the more we assume that they know what we intend, what we want, or what we need, and we forget to have those recalibration check-in conversations, and we don't realign. So that is the message, which is it's never too late to start, and it's never too soon to keep going, which is what's working, what's not, what's one thing I can do to help us or you to be more successful, to have more fun at work, to achieve your hopes and dreams.
Absolutely. Love that. I know we're coming towards the end of our conversation, but I'm intrigued because I know that off air you we kind of joked around and you said that you'd been doing what you've been doing for like the best part of 40 years, which is a hell of a long time
I
in what you do.
It's hard to believe,
Um,
isn't it?
it is hard to believe, even though you're
I've
a
got
fresh
more wisdom
21.
hairs, though, so there you go.
Well, at least you've got more hair than me. But that's not difficult. Anyway, but what is, I mean, obviously you're not going to do this for another 40 years, but tell me, what does, from your perspective, like, I know that you're focused very much on, I know that you had a particularly great year on the speaker circuit and you'll probably continue to do that moving into the new year. What does the next 5 to 10 years look like for you?
So you're right. Sky Team is us. It's me,
Yeah.
it's Eric, it's Ruby. And we don't have an exit plan because we're having too much fun, doing great work with great clients, having fun, and just loving what we do. But I have, within the last 12 months, made a mental shift, which is, to your point, keynoting. And so my
Yeah.
signature keynote, fine is a 4-letter word, is getting great responses because we all wear a mask of, I'm fine. But behind it, stress, anxiety, burnout, etc. So for me, the next 5 to 10 years is, well, I don't want to look that far. I've never looked that far. That's silly because I'm going to win the lottery. But within the next 2 years, it is keynoting and executive coaching. I love the impact that has, and selfishly, the opportunity to travel to new destinations excites me. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm working on. And then the other 8 years of the 5 to 10 years you mentioned, you know what? I'll work with them when I get closer to them.
I always like to ask the question, like, what does legacy mean to you? What does the bigger picture look like?
Yeah, well, legacy for me is the ripple effect from the conversations that I have like this. I mean, I had
Yeah.
an email this morning from a leader who has just been impacted by layoffs, but she was reaching out both to reconnect and how could I help her as she goes to her next big adventure. But the message was, you were there at the beginning of my career or at this stage of my career. You're also here as it now transitions and morphs. And to be seen as somebody that she could reach out to for that advice and guidance, that's my legacy, is empowering her to be that person for the next emerging leader
Mm.
that needs support to
Yeah.
navigate their own pickle and tough
Yeah.
moment.
Absolutely. Well, listen, this has been fantastic. First of all, second time round, it's taken us a while to get here. So just want to say this has been a lot of great fun. So I just want to say thank you so much. It's been a great conversation.
My pleasure, Adam.
Absolutely. For you guys that have been listening in attentively, I feel like Morag's given probably a hell of a masterclass when it comes to relationships. I love bringing on thought leaders that have a particular vertical that have not only of interest, but also has a direct impact on the way that you grow, scale, or exit your business, depending on what you want to do, of course. So for my ask for you guys today, if you haven't already done so, make sure that you go over and connect with Morag over on social media, of course. And we'll put all of her links below. Check out the couple of books that she's written. I believe it's the second edition of Cultivate
It
that's now
is.
out. Yes. So make sure you go check that out. Just want to say thank you so much. And if it's the first, or if you're returning back to listening, congratulations. But if it's the first time that you have listened, congratulations. Please make sure that you go and hit follow or subscribe on whatever channel or whatever poison that you are listening to, of course, Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple, whatever it is. Feel free to subscribe to that. Anyway, thank you so much, and we'll see you again back on The Business Strategist. Take care. Speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye bye.